Thank you so much, Joy. In case anybody thought it was simple, I hope now you realize it's not. Our next speaker is Leah Mix. She is the CEO of Enthea. She is also an LMFT, and Enthea is a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating access to psychedelic therapies through health plan coverage. Leah has a master's degree in counseling with multicultural populations and over 20 years of diverse experience in the behavioral health field, including in community mental health and managed care organizations. She earned her certification in psychedelic therapies and research from the California Institute for Integral Studies program in 2016 and co-founded an alumni association, and she continues as an adjunct faculty for the program. Leah has helped organize the emerging field of psychedelic medicine to accelerate the integration of psychedelic-assisted therapy into the U.S. healthcare system, including achieving health insurance coverage post-FDA approval. Leah's motivation is grounded in the healing of her own trauma, and she is committed to her inner work and that of others. Please welcome Leah Mix.
I wonder, is this thing going? Yeah? No? Louder? Louder? Wonderful to be with you all here today. And what a beautiful container for co-creation that Kevin and the Horizons team have built for us here. Thank you guys so much. My name is Leah Mix. My expertise is at the intersection of psychedelic therapies and health insurance. I'm blessed to have been contributing in the field of psychedelics for 6 years in collaboration with MAPS, with elders, and with other wise leaders and thought partners. And it is only by their grace and generosity that I am able to offer you some information today that I hope you will find helpful. The purpose of this talk is to give you something that is essential and actionable. And so in the spirit of pragmatism, I'd like to connect with the heart of what we're talking about when we talk about insurance coverage for psychedelic therapies. What we're really talking about is this: safe, affordable access to psychedelic healthcare for all who can benefit. So I want to invite you for a moment to use your full body wisdom. And in your mind's eye, imagine what that looks like. And now drop into your body and imagine what that feels like. When you know that everyone who needs it has safe, affordable access to psychedelic therapies. How does that feel? That feeling is our common goal. It is a knowing that is inside of us, a knowing that we can carry forward as we transverse the landscape ahead. So let's go. Hopefully, we are at the dawning of a wide spectrum of access to psychedelics. For the purpose of this talk, we are going to focus really specifically on FDA-approved psychedelic-assisted therapy, and very specifically on the payer infrastructure and how we connect and communicate with it through policy. There are two other topics that are really important for insurance coverage for psychedelic therapies. Those are training and care delivery, but we're going to start with first things first. We're going to do this at a very high level with round numbers so we can get to the point. So 90% of the US population has health insurance coverage at any given time. Half of that population is getting that coverage through a government-sponsored plan, and the other half through a commercial plan. 90% of the commercial plans are employer-sponsored, which leaves 10% that are individual plans. When we look a little bit closer, it looks like this. So these are the different types of plans that are covered. represents different buckets of money, different populations covered, and different decision makers. So the self-funded side, if you look at the commercial side, the contrast between the self-funded side and the fully insured side is that the self-funded side are companies that are essentially paying cash for medical claims, and they're making their own benefit decisions. That's in contrast to the fully insured plans, in which the carriers are making the decisions for the populations that they cover in whatever state that they may be operating. So when we look closer, it actually looks like this. Now, what's challenging about this is all of these different payer segments are working with different processes, different stakeholders, different mandates, different motivations, and often different information when they're making decisions about what new therapies to cover. And these segments do not communicate with each other particularly well, if at all. This is the disjointing of our payer system in the US, which causes significant inequities in access to care and in health outcomes. In fact, there is a crisis in access to behavioral health treatment right now, even for people who have good health insurance. So we are relying on a disjointed system that has not figured out access to care to create access to psychedelic therapies. That is the situation we find ourselves in, my friends. The most common questions that I get when asked about insurance coverage for psychedelic therapies is if it will be covered and when. These are the wrong questions because they rely too heavily on a system that has not figured out access for standard behavioral health treatments to create access for psychedelic therapies, which are highly novel. What I'm not saying is that we need to fix the US healthcare system in order to create access to psychedelic therapies. That is not what I am saying. What I am saying is that we need to think differently if we are to create access to psychedelic therapies using the resources of the US healthcare system. The questions we need to focus on to help solve for access and equity inside of psychedelic healthcare begin with what, who, and how. What are the services that need to be covered? What are the services that are essential for psychedelic-assisted therapy, psychedelic healthcare? Who is qualified to render the treatment? How do we deliver these therapies to diverse populations of people? And how do we hold practitioners accountable to standards? If the field is able to mindfully answer these questions and communicate those answers to the healthcare system in a way that is coherent and trustworthy, then there is a way to create more equitable access to care inside of psychedelic healthcare. There is a way to do this. So how do we do it? We look no further than our own neurons. So it was recently found out that the human neurons are unique. Oh, did it not go? Okay, yeah, we look no further than our own neurons. You see, it was recently discovered, I think this is super cool, that human neurons are different from other species neurons in that they have fewer ionic pathways, and that means that they're less likely to kind of fire random willy-nilly. Instead, oh, there's something happening now. Let's hope that this doesn't get out of hand here. So our neurons are less likely to fire random willy-nilly. Instead, they concentrate their energy and they channel it, right? And so, you know, they're also bigger, right? They hold a lot. There's a lot going on in there, but they harness their power and they send a focus signal. And this is an evolutionary advantage. So essentially, we need to do the same thing. We need to build structures that can coalesce the will of the field and communicate effectively with the healthcare system. I wish that wasn't all happening. Now, if there's anyone who can help me with that not moving forward and I can just call out next slide, that would be great. Yeah, we're going to get through this, I promise you guys. So essentially, we need to build the structures that will coalesce the will of the field and communicate effectively with the healthcare system. Once these structures are in place and functioning well, the field becomes coherent and trustworthy to the healthcare system and its payers. So essentially, we need to build the neural network between the psychedelic ecosystem and the US healthcare system. The will of the field, which could also be called policy recommendations, then begin to be reflected in healthcare decisions, including coverage decisions, and the resources of the healthcare system will begin to flow. Now, this is not the work of any one organization, and in fact, a lot of different companies communicating different messages can create incoherence, which can impede access. An example of this incoherence is that we have many pharma companies in this space that are acting as if getting their products to market and making their returns is as easy as getting a drug on a new formulary. Getting a new drug covered and on formularies is a cakewalk compared to launching a new clinical specialty into the US healthcare system and getting those services reimbursed by health insurance, which is actually what needs to happen in order for psychedelic drugs to reach patients. So again, in order to move psychedelic products from the manufacturer to the consumer, to patients, by way of psychedelic therapy, this infrastructure is essential. It must be built. So we need to just think differently, and we need to start now. If we do not have these pathways of communication between the psychedelic ecosystem and the healthcare and the payer system, those systems will not communicate well. So if you're invested in a psychedelic pharma company or your business model relies in any way on insurance reimbursement for psychedelic therapies, you want to be very, very interested in this infrastructure being robust. If you plan on working in the field and you want to get paid and you want your voice to be included in how this care is actually rendered, then you want to get involved. The good news is several of these essential policy infrastructure projects are already underway. The American Psychedelic Practitioners Association is like the AMA for the field, and it is designed so it can even interface on behalf of the field with the actual AMA and do things that we need to happen, like lobby for new CPT codes. That's very important, and issue standards of care that are important for clinical practice, but really important for medical malpractice lawsuits, which will happen, and which is one of the many good reasons we need the Psychedelic Bar Association. The outcome of those cases, those malpractice cases, will make a huge impact on how this field actually rolls out, how care is delivered and to whom. Brain Futures is an honorable mention. It's not actually a psychedelic healthcare infrastructure project, but it is a really wonderful healthcare policy organization that can amplify the will of the field as the will of the field is decided inside of these infrastructure projects. There is a list of these projects as they're known at phiprojects.org, so you can look at them there, and more will be added as they come online. You can also sign up for updates. So, almost done. What are the characteristics of these types of infrastructure projects? Well, first, for the healthcare system to take them seriously, they must be a nonprofit. They have to be designed to be inclusive of the diversity of voices in the field, and then to communicate that messaging to the US healthcare system. And if we want equity inside of psychedelic healthcare, the leadership of these organizations must be itself diverse. These gentlemen collectively have nearly 150 years of experience working in the healthcare industry. They include an author of the Affordable Care Act, a champion of the Federal Mental Health Parity Act. They've all worked in C-suites of large managed care organizations, working with both the commercial and the government side of payers. They're easily within the 1% of people in this country who know how the US healthcare system works. And they're my collaborators. They're my colleagues and advisors, and they're deeply caring human beings. We are so fortunate to have them supporting this field, and they are helping to support this infrastructure coming into place because they know that this infrastructure is essential for this field to draw down on the resources of the US healthcare system. And what I really think is going on with these guys is they have the feeling too, right? When everyone has safe, affordable access to psychedelic therapy, they feel that too. And they believe this is possible. But my friends, this is really up to you. If you have a vested interest in insurance coverage for psychedelic therapies, I hope you will reach out to these projects and ask them what they need. Oops. In closing, I invite you to periodically return throughout the weekend to the feeling you connected with at the start of this talk, when you know that everyone who needs it has safe, affordable access to psychedelic therapies. May that soon be the world in which we are all living. Thank you.